Johnson, and this is focused on Liberia. Hit it! From Kemau to Captan, mountain back to Atlantic Ocean, Obomi Hills to Budgetary, to educate, elevate, and promote. Talk about home affairs, hey, in diaspora, current affairs, hey, reliable information, history, talking about culture, hey, politics, education, entertainment, business, sports, advertisement, articulation. Focus on Liberia. Focus on Liberia. Focus on Liberia. From Monday to Sunday.
Hey, ladies and gentlemen out there in Focus of Liberia land, welcome one more time to our show. Today we have some very pertinent questions and topics for you. On my panelists today, joining me is nobody else but the eloquent Mr. Jerome Gaiman.
Thank you very much.
And also with us today on the panel is the most erudite Dr. Clarence Pearson.
Thank you for having me, Mr. Eastman, and hi to my esteemed panelists and our viewers out there. It's good to be on the show tonight.
And of course, not to be outdone, we have the erudite Mr. A. Buckeye Euclid.
Thank you, Jimmy. It's a pleasure to be here.
Welcome. And of course, one of our young aspirants and vibrant minds, we have Mr. William Gibson.
Thank you, Mr. Eastman. Glad to be here. Good evening, everybody.
So, gentlemen, there are topics today, as you should have already been familiar with. We find that the government of Liberia has spent over $15 million off budget. Now, between two of you, between us, I don't see that as contentious, and then we will get into that. The next question is, Liberia's Commerce Minister rides over a $96,000 car. And what is another interesting topic for the night? The U.S. delegation. There is a U.S. delegation to Liberia that has been sent to Liberia for the establishment of the War Crime Court. Well, if we're not serious about it, somebody up here is serious. And finally, and we'll leave it at that for the night because that's going to take us into a good bit of time. All right. So the first one, Liberian government is spending $15 million off budget. Now, there's a reason why countries don't want to do that, right? Because the whole reason for establishing laws and procedures is for transparency, so that you can account for the money, you know where the money is going and all of that. But here we find the government already spending $15 million off budget. Now, if I'm not mistaken, the budget was produced and recalled and modified, and there was this fingering allegations, and then just the other day it has finally been signed by the legislature and sent to the executive. So Jerome, I mean, what are they going to do if they don't have a budget? They have no choice. They have to keep the government running, right?
Well, as we do here in the United States, they will have to do an emergency line of item to keep the government afloat, to not allow a total shutdown of the government. In Liberia, everything that has to do with Liberia is only on paper. Only. The reason you have laws is a compass. It guides you along the way. When the Supreme Court makes a decision and the president disregards that, it tells you a lot about the president and the direction of the country. When you find a budget that is actually a legal instrument put together by the nation, and then the lawyers themselves, the lawmakers that are supposed to follow the law, including the executive, they turn around and do what it did is the exact thing the president did by going around the established constitutional authority of the Supreme Court of Liberia, going around the Supreme Court. This is exactly what's happening. A law that establishes the budget, they are going around the budget and even offending themselves, because the 4 pillars of the arrest program, the number one there is agriculture. They cut agriculture massively. Education, they cut education. They cut healthcare. And then they increase miscellaneous by millions. So they thought the fish get rotten from the head. The president of Liberia, Joseph Yuma Boyka, began his administration by breaking the law, and all his adjutants are following suit. So this is where it is, Mr. Eastman.
Yeah, Brother Dugley, let me come to you, because I heard Mr. Gaiman's argument that they think there are certain cuts and what had been made to it. But we can get into that, what the composition of the budget, but without a budget to run, because there has been a little bit go back and forth with this budget, had not been finalized, and we're how many months into the year? We're in September, and just the other day it was finalized. Now, are we surprised that they made off-budget expenditures?
Actually, Jimmy, this is not surprising. You know, in every government, when especially a government as small as the Liberian government is, usually you have a contingency plans in place to fall back on just in case you need to, because as you know the budget, the processes that must come to play to come up with a budget is all projections, and right. Sometimes those projections can usually in some cases there are shortfalls in those projections, and the expected revenue might not be realized as expected. Now, with that said, Gaiman was just making a reference to how whatever we do is usually done on paper. But usually that's how it should be done, except that when it comes to implementations, Liberians have problems, because we have now come to adopt all these bad practices, and we've come to normalize them to the point where now people are spending money that we don't even have. And so what's going to happen is we are going to try to come in, find a way to either through our bilateral or multilateral partners to come to our rescue again and to dig us further deep in debt in a way that trust me, my sense is they are going to fall back on China. China is the likely place that you will expect them to go to. So, brother Jimmy, is part of this troubling trend that we've seen highlighted once more in the rescue government that's supposed to have rescued us from all the ills that we're complaining about with the CDC government. So it's not surprising. My fear is there's not a workable plan, a contingency plan that they can fall back on. So the civil servants and the people who depend on the government for survival are going to be the one who are going to suffer the most, because the interests of the country, the interests of the people are not paramount in whatever they do, but rather themselves. So it's become a vicious cycle where there's no end to it. Every day it keeps raising up certain ugly head, and so this is just one of those ugly heads that we've now come to see again in the budgetary misappropriation.
Okay, Gibson. Everybody is talking about the budget, but what I was alluding to is that we have the budget being approved almost simultaneously when we have a new administration coming in. And this has led, I think this is going to lead to problems, because if the administration that's coming in did not have any input in the next year's budget, they have no way of justifying it. They have no, and their agenda may be completely different. Would you suggest maybe we change the time that we approve the budget so that it aligns? It is already in force before another administration come in. Yeah, we are 15 million, and the budget is not even quite 100% approved.
Yeah, I think there's definitely a need for the incoming administration to have a say so in what the overall design would be for their budget coming into the fiscal year. I think being that there's now, I think an act that they've now put into place as far as transition taking place and into writing on when transition will look like. I think there needs to be a prioritization of that. Of course, maybe putting that in also into the act that makes the laws takes place when it comes to how what transitions look like in the country. I think there needs to be some work done around that as far as the budget and what that looks like. But before I close, I would like to also just expound on what off-budget spending is, right? The good and the bad side of it.
Okay.
Off-budget spending is really, like I said, there's a good side to it and a bad side to it. The advantages is the flexibility for urgent needs. That urgent need, let's say, can be a health crisis, needs to be addressed, right? So without waiting for legislative approval, that's when you will go ahead and use some of that power that you have in the executive to go ahead and do some of that spending, that off-budget. The second advantage is funding for long-term projects, right? So if there's any roles or any other infrastructural projects that are taking place that needs to be still on pace, that's when off-budget spending will be appropriate. Or when you're trying to bypass some delays in the bureaucracy process and everything, with the budget process being slow, which of course we all saw there was a lot of back and forth that took place. So that's the third advantage, right? And then the potential risk that comes with this off-budget spending that we're seeing is the lack of transparency.
Right.
The government has not been completely transparent as to what the spending was for. I think we're now seeing paperwork that's coming out, but also there's a lack of transparency in that when we talk about high amounts given to funerals and then given to all these different things that, quite frankly, is not in the best interest of the public or the Liberian people as a whole. When we talk about infrastructural development and things that needs to be taking place, that off-budget spending didn't account for a lot of those things that we saw on paper. So there's a huge lack of transparency and also fiscal discipline. I don't think it shows that this government has any fiscal discipline whatsoever. If you're paying for funeral costs here and there, paying for armored vehicles, which of course is needed, but at what rate? Are you turning certain things into a pricey tag when it needs to be a bit more of a fiscal mindset that's more disciplined as opposed to just lackadaisical?
Okay, excellent. Dr. Pearson, I'm coming to you now. We've seen the downside of off-budget spending, as Mr. Gibson just illustrated. But are we not setting ourselves up because the process and the procedure are wrong? So you're going to invite off-budget spending. What are your ideas about this whole scenario?
Thank you, Mr. Eastman. If I may, let me just clarify a couple of myths that we have out there. First of all, people like to compare Liberia to America without looking at the facts. When we hear in the United States, people talked about the country is going to shut down because of no budget. It's not what happened in Liberia. Liberia has an approved and signed budget. Going to request. Somebody got a mute in the back there.
Right. Some guy who got a mute.
Going to the legislature to ask for a recast before the legislature can even approve your recast, it doesn't mean you don't have a budget. You have an approved budget. The budget is law until the legislature rescind that budget. No one has rescind our actual budget at the time we're
but even if it's not approved yet, it has to be approved.
Our budget was approved and signed into law in May. So when you're going to seek a recast, that doesn't nullify the standing budget until the recast is completed and signed into law. So there was no risk of us being shut down, whatever. The government could still spend based on the approved budget that they have, the law that they have, until it's repealed. And having said that, another myth that we're trying to get away from also, Mr. Eastman, is that President Boyka did not operate on George Manuel Weah's budget. Former President Weah's budget. Former President Weah's budget was submitted to the 54th legislature on December 11 for a special section to run from December 11 to the 22nd. And within that 11 days period, the 54th supposed to have passed that budget to make it ready for Boyka to start expending in January. President Boyka recalled that budget because he wanted the budget to represent his agenda. Now, this is the issue. President Boyka recalls that budget, and he was sitting in America and not having control over the situation. So they record the budget that was submitted. Don't forget, let us not forget, President Boyka won elections in November. He left Liberia in December. There was a transitional process. And if he had worked, like we're arguing, if he had stayed in Liberia and worked alongside the ruling establishment, the budget would have been one of the things that they would have presented to the National Legislature, the 54th, on December 11th, because he had already won in November. So he had John Molu, he had Amara Kone. Those are all very smart financial experts. They would have given him that budget, the CDC budget, and redesigned it to be the rescue team budget and submit it in that very December, and then get it running in January. But instead, we started coming to the 55th legislature in March, and that's secondly, and got approved finally in May, and I mean that shows lack of leadership. And coming on to what you are saying, no, listen, there is no excuse for us spending outside of the approved budget, and I can give you the reason why. When you want to carry on expenditure that is not within the budget, there's something called supplemental budget. You can make a supplemental budget and make an argument. And if you say for any reason that our country no longer accepts supplemental budgeting, then you must go back to the legislature to ask for a recast like they're doing now. But if you remember, Mr. Eastman, the recast did not come about until we heard all the noise about the funeral of the national budget. So was the recast going to be used now as a means of covering up the $15 million that they have already spent outside of the budget, so that they can justify that it is in the budget? No, these are complications that is border around dishonesty, it borders on corruption, it borders on insincerity, and borders on bad governance. And I think it's hard for our country. And let me just quickly list the things. 2.3 million unexplained miscellaneous. 2 million to NSA that Broker was already going to audit, but failed to audit because he said it cannot be audited. Legislature took 1.5 million just to stay there. They represented alone, just to remain for special session. And then the senator took $812,000. They gave $65,000 for funeral service for Thomas now. They gave $191,679 to the Muslim community. They gave $250,000 to the Ministry of State for whatever foolish payment they had to go and do there, nonsense expenditure. They gave $30,000 plus to the Ministry of State again to use, they said, to help with Justice Nangbe's burial. They gave $28,000 for VP office to get on the cost. Everybody getting a cut. And then they gave $1.1 million for the president to go buy armor vehicle for he and the vice president. They gave $250,000 on another fiasco. They call it for disaster recovery in Riverside. So if you wanted to make all of these expenses, don't we have emergency budget? Don't we have budget for vehicles for the president's office and stuff like that? Why didn't we put these things in the budget? Why did we go out? And I'll close by saying this, Mr. Eastman. Just permit me, I beg you. If President Barker did this in the Baptist church, the Effort Baptist Church, with the Baptist budget, in the Baptist church, the deacons are the most powerful point in the Baptist church. In the Baptist church, the deacon got more say. If Barker was given the Baptist church, Effort Baptist Church budget for the year, and then he went in the Effort Baptist Church account and took off $15 million to spend it on something outside of the church's account, what happened to the revenue and the church and the church function? It's wrong. In our youth for now, but it is wrong.
Yeah. So Mr. Dukley, let me go to you. Are we running into these problems trying to cover up mis expenditures, that we didn't use the mechanism available to us to recast the budget? What do you think is what are we creating our own problem?
Well, the problem exists already in not following their own procedure or established procedure to get the budget out of the House of Representatives. I think Brother Gibson alluded to what I consider to be part of the main problem, which is corruption. Otherwise, recasting under normal circumstances, recasting a budget simply means there were things that you did not, I guess you did not plan for, and they came up and you need to spend, and then so you find a way you spend that money out of the already allocated a budget. But you see, because of the lack of transparency and because of the way, like I said earlier, Jimmy, we have now come to normalize all these bad practices, and we've come to see them as if that's the normal way of doing things. That's not the way to do things. Even in a democracy where you have to recast a budget, there is a procedure that must be followed. There is a process that is laid out clearly that must, and part of that process is, be transparent and explain to the people why you need to recast, and the recast figures that you are trying to allocate. What are you doing it for? What is it for? So these are all things. I mean, these are rudimentary bureaucracy that any government should know. But again, it goes back to to reflect how our legislature functions, our executive functions. So there's no transparency. There is no, and you can even recall when between the legislature and the executive, they were going back and forth as to who tampered with the budget, who did what. These are all part of what you're not seeing about what is going on with the recasting of the budget. That is the result of some of those processes not being followed. You know, I mean, it's a normal thing to recast a budget, as a matter of fact, but the way you go about it and the way you justify the recast is what that is missing in our situation. Because at the end of the day, what is primary on their mind is themselves in our budget. You know, and Jimmy, if you recall here, I said it on this very platform that one of my expectations was to see the rescue mission deviate from the way, as they would say, from business as usual. Look, there is just so much waste in the government, so much waste that even if they're able to come to 50% of the waste that is in the government, that 50% can make a significant dent in some of the things that they're trying to do. And I don't know on what planet do we exist where you see the government paying somebody to be in the legislature, they pay their rent, and they pay, I mean, all these crazy things that only in Liberia that you see happening. And then yeah, we stay complaining about budgetary shortfalls, because all of these things are things that we have now come to normalize. I mean, since when are we supposed to be paying somebody scratch card? Since when? So all these budgetary things, you see them talking about, the executive temper with it, the legislature temper with it. It brings all back to the same place that we have always wanted to stay away from. Corruption, corruption, and corruption.
Thank you. Jerome, listen, I heard you talking till you were blue in the face. We have been talking about why we are spending so much on gasoline, from car rentals, purchasing expensive cars, all these things. But right in your face, these people granted themselves $150,000 more to carry on projects not even earmarked by the government. So right in your face, they are telling you they will do what they want, even though they are getting an exorbitant amount of money. What do you say about this budget misalignment? You're muted.
For those of us that have spoken about this, we have to admit finally, and I hate to quote somebody that popularized the word cartel, but that's what it has become. It's a complete syndicate. 3 sets of them: the House, the Senate, and the executive. And then if you add I like the way they did it though. They didn't want the judiciary to be left out. So they cut a good chunk of that and they gave it to the judiciary too, and they have gone silent. So the 4 branches that's supposed to be check and balance.
Three.
Yeah, no, I come into the 4th estate now. I'm coming to the 4th because so far I look at only one of them. Only Rodney CA is out there talking. It looks like everybody else has been either bought, work for the government, or they're getting their cut. So you see the death of the journalist. They sent some good money there. So the people are out of school now. The kids are out of school in Liberia. The Minister of Education called the entities to withhold opening of school for another week or 2 because times are hard. Then they turned around and slashed the education budget by almost $2 million. They said the hospitals got no drugs, then they slashed the health ministry. It is unbelievable what is happening in that country. You think the lower house, look, another comment, the guy that I like, Musa Ability, over there coming now and saying, I tried my best, but I was overwhelmed. But he, in the same breath, he never said, I'm returning all the largesses that have been sent to me, all the perks, I'm going to return it and just take my salary. No, he did a deal on us. He said, I told you I didn't want it, but you give it to me, so I'm going to take it. Can you imagine this man trying to be a con man?
That's right.
He is. So here we are in these United States. We would get money from the federal government, will do budget. If I send my budget in and I expect like the United Way, the state, the federal, the county is supposed to give me some money. Because usually the funding that comes to me comes from the ad valorem, that's how much they projected in that taxes will come in through the houses that people buy on property taxes. If they finally find out that the expectation, the forecast is not going to be forthcoming, they will inform all of us that whatever money that was coming down will be cut by 10%. Then we go back now and recast our budget, readjust to reflect what they call the actual budget. Because we have a proposed budget and an actual budget. So it was supposed to spend $40,000 on gas. We're going to cut now from $40,000 to maybe $20,000. Transportation, vacation, all of these things, they call it budget transfer, whatever you want to do the real budget. But you cannot take the money that you don't have, that you say you don't have, and put $2.5 million in something called the NSA budget for covert operation. Covert operation. What is that?
To go blockade the CDC headquarters.
Okay. That's that kind of money, Mr. Gibson. We're talking about some serious amount of money here, and they says miscellaneous a covert operation. They're going undercover to do what I have no clue. In a small Monroe, where a few blocks. 2.5. And where did they put it? In the NSA, where there's no audit allowed, they put it there. We in Liberia, like in the United States, we have a separation of church and state. Where do you see the president taking $190,000 for Muslim community, then $60,000 for Muslim youth engagement? Where do you see this happening in the real democracy? So here it is. You don't want people to talk. You don't want this case may wind up in the judiciary. So what do? You get them a very good cut and they take it too. So everybody getting cut except the little people. So
everybody getting cut.
Everybody get a cut except the little people.
We used to call that thing kafu. They give you some of it, the kafu. You can't talk because the kafu in your belly. Mr. Gibson, I'll let you close on this matter. Right or wrong? What we doing, right or wrong? Is it right or is it wrong?
I mean, it's just plain wrong. I mean, if you look at it, anybody that is thinking from a logical standpoint and not along party lines will know right from wrong, and this is just plain wrong.
Right. Gentlemen, we're going to the second topic. And the second topic is it evokes several thoughts. The Liberia's commerce minister, a car was bought for him for $96,000. And what was even more provoking in this purchase is that it was purchased by the IRA, the Internal Revenue Agency, without due process going through the purchasing and bureau that governs purchasing. And rightly so, they are not the body responsible to buy cars for government officials. So there was all kinds of wrongs about this. But where a lot of people stick on is that in poor countries where you see government, in poor countries like Liberia, that government has limited funds. Ideally, money should be spent on essential services like healthcare, education, infrastructure, and poverty alleviation. An expensive vehicle represents a significant expenditure that could have been used for something else. So I'm going to give it to you first, Mr. Gibson. What do you think about that?
I mean, just another situation where it's a whole lot of smoke and mirrors because nobody knows the true facts except the people who sat at the table. And if you are being, I would think if you're being accused of something as the commerce minister, if you're somebody who wants to protect your character, you will come out with all the facts, as opposed to not answering questions or going on to certain platforms to address the issue, but then when questions are being proffered to you, say redirected to the LRA. I think it raises more eyebrows. It's showing that you're not somebody who's really transparent, especially if there's so many things coming out. As I said, if you have the facts and you say you didn't accept a gift at that expense, or saying that it was less than what it is, there's so many inconsistencies within his own story to where you can't help but scratch your head and say, well, what's the true facts then? When will that come out? I think from what I'm seeing on Front Page Africa, there's a recording apparently that's floating around now of him trying to get the protection of his UP partisans within the legislature to not have this fall back on him. So it's not looking good for him at all. I think if you were somebody who had a clean hand in all of this, you will come forth and be truthful. But it's not looking like he's a truthful individual. He played a lot of bad dealings behind the scene, and now it's being revealed. So it's all going to play out in the media, and I look forward to seeing what will happen.
Yes, I heard that same thing for the protection of the UP partisans, but the UP is saying, well, why didn't you come to us when you were making your decision? You already did that. But so this definitely represents a misallocation of public resources. But Mr. Dukley, it also symbolizes something else where you and I know, especially what are the catalysts for 1980? Symbols of inequality. When a government official in a poor country are seen using luxury vehicles, it can symbolize inequality and create resentment among the population. This can erode trust in government institutions, making citizens feel that their leaders are disconnected from their realities. What do you think, Mr. Dukley?
Yeah, and again, Jimmy, this is what we've been speaking against, and it seems like everything is falling on deaf ears. And if you recall, when this allegation first surfaced, there was a challenge. And the challenge was, if you think what we are saying is not true, show us the documents. Let us see how much this car was bought for. That was the challenge that was made when the allegation was put forward by, I believe it was Martin Colley, I believe it was. Mm-hmm. And he said he does have in his possessions document that can substantiate his claim. And the subsequent denial and explanation that followed did not hold water. Simply, there were things that he said, but he did not deny the essence of the allegation, which was that a vehicle was bought with X amount of dollars. And these dollars came through, MedTech. So until I think, was it yesterday? I'm not quite sure when I read it. I listened to the minister, and the minister came out laying out his success in business, things that he has done, how he constructed his house 2018. But none of those explanations deny the fact that there was a allocation of certain amount for his car that he drives. So again, the Minister of Commerce raised more questions than he provided answers to the allegations that were made. So, but me being from Liberia, knowing how things work in that country, again, Jimmy, as they always try to let us to believe, it is still business as usual, as we know it. There's nothing new here, and the letter from LRA only confirmed the allegations, and the discrepancy in terms of 96,000 and 100, that's really irrelevant, in my opinion. The discrepancy in the figures that were in the letter LRA put out there and the actual amount that was alleged, to me, is irrelevant. The fact that that amount was even allocated without, and I was still dare to say that without due process, because I mean, since when? I mean, Jimmy, it's sad to see a country as poor, a country as needy as ours, to have these, you see, these things, they all add up. $96,000 here, $250,000 there, they add up, and they can make a difference if they were not being wasted. We hear, and I always say on this platform, sarcastically, that I don't even think the Ministry of Education knows how many schools there are in the Republic of Liberia, and we know how badly unequipped those schools are, and we know how badly the teachers need training, how our infrastructures. So all of these things being said, again, it's just what we have now come to normalize. It's almost that we have to accept these ways of doing things. But the Minister of Commerce did not show any proof, anything to the contrary of the claim of the allegation that was made. So I only see it as this is just a furtherance of their corrupt practices as we know it, and unfortunately, the people of Liberia are going to be the victim, because they are the ones who are going to have no health care. They are the ones who are going to have bad roads. They are the ones who are going to be experiencing all the ills that we're trying to avoid in our lives.
Thank you, Jerome. Misallocation of public resources, a symbol of equality, and now, as Mr. Duke pointed out, perception of corruption. Expensive vehicles are often associated with corruption or misuse of public funds, even if the purchase is illegal. It raises concern about how public resources are being managed and whether officials are prioritizing personal comfort over public welfare. Do you think it's a smart decision on behalf of this administration to continually buy expensive vehicles when people cannot eat? They're living on less than $2 a day?
Well, when we discuss these issues, people see it as we are beating up on the Unity Party government. I think prior to us coming on, we were discussing how do we get Unity partisans, people that support Joseph Walker, to come back on this show to at least have an honest conversation. And you are having problem. I am having problem inviting folks. Mr. Jai is having problem inviting folks. Prior to the election, this was the home of the Unity Party.
Mm-hmm.
Besides Spoon Network, Focus on Liberia was the home of the Unity Party, including my own show on Point. Mr. Alio Kamara, and I'm calling these names because even with my old friend Tule, this is where we were. In fact, Mr. Dillon himself came on one day on the show to make the case. But now that his shoes is on the other foot, I think you guys have been too generous to the Unity Party to say that this is a business as usual. No. This is even worse than where we were when we were talking, because what they were saying was he wants to spend all the money on park, that park we will eat. You want to spend it on road, that road we will eat. You want to do that this we will eat. So this was the mantra for the Unity Party. We can't eat park. We can't eat roads. So they wanted to come. Now here we are. In 8 months, this man who was complaining that he helped the Unity Party and Ellen didn't do him well, and he was drowning. Today, the man that we hired, there is a report from Redness here working on other people. Not only did he buy this car, but he has a yacht that just arrived in the country, a yacht. Almost, some people say $1 million yacht, because according to the news, it's very similar to what President Tubman had when he was president. So this same commerce minister, when he got hired, they immediately increased the price of rice, our most political stable commodity. And he went to the Senate, to the legislature. Instead of defending the Liberian people, he defended the rice importers and said that rice needed to increase because the rice on the international market, the price had gone up, so it was justified. The president of Liberia went to the meeting and said rice is not going to be increased, and everybody was cheering President Walker, said he had done something. The president left, and his commerce minister disrespected him and raised the price of rice. Today, the same man wrote, a car. We are not talking about just regular mistakes, but we are talking about something that is illegal. It's a crime. Conflict of interest. MedTech is being supervised by the Ministry of Commerce. MedTech is under the regulation of the Ministry of Commerce. MedTech is buying car over $100,000, like my brother Douglas said. The variance in the price of the car means absolutely nothing. The idea here that the law says you cannot buy a car for more than $40,000 in that area, and the fact that Double Jala say I approve $96,000 without going through the PPCC, without going through the business. I mean, these are not regular. This is illegal. You can't do this. But like we say, if the head of the ship did this from the beginning, and the president himself is buying a car for $1.2 million,
bulletproof, right?
Bulletproof armored vehicle. Who he and the vice president, are they running from their own shadow? Are they running from the people that they came to rescue? Who will be rescuing me and I'm killing the person? Who wants to kill Joseph Walker for which he wants an armored car driving down Monrovia from the executive mansion to rehab, which is maybe like 5-7 miles? Who want to kill the president? And he bought one for the vice president. So the two cartel members, they got a bulletproof vest, the bulletproof car, they got the EPS people, they got a private security. The regular people cannot see them anymore. The regular people they came to rescue cannot see them anymore. They are walking around. And here is Mr. Modad. Modad did this because if the president himself can do it, why shouldn't I? He's spending $1 million, I'm spending 100,000. So I'm just a fraction of what he's doing. Are you going to tell him to send it back? The president bought the armor car illegally too because it's off budget. It didn't go through the process. So if the president can break the law, what happened to the ministers and everybody else? So those who want to separate Joseph Walker from the cartel, like Mr. Murray used to say, Joseph Walker is like the godfather of a crime family. He sits way back and his adjutants go ahead and do the capping, the whack people, and he sits back like nothing happened. Joseph Walker have not said anything about somebody buying a car. Who bought $1 million bulletproof car for him? Have you heard him say anything? No. So this man deliberately, in fact, today we heard members of his workforce, protester went to the Minister of Commerce to pull him from the car.
Yes, there was a rumor of that they were setting to
he snuck out of there.
He got tipped off.
You got somebody tipped him off, said they're coming for you, and he snuck out of there.
Okay.
This is the man. So, listen, the fish get rotten from the head no matter what you say. Joseph Boyka got his $1.5 million car. Whatever the price is, he and Coon got a bulletproof car coming. You can chunk all your eggs you want. You ain't going to touch him. But that's why it is. Someone said, no matter how bulletproof that car is, at some point you got to get out.
Well, yeah, here's another aspect, Mr. Pearson. I'm coming to you here. When officials in poor countries flaunt wealth, it can harm the country's international reputation, affecting its ability to attract aid, investments, and loans. You notice the president has been going all of the different countries trying to attract loans and investments from organizations. Can we expect the investors to consider us serious when we do not commit to fiscal responsibility?
I would say no, Mr. Eastman. That is a good question. First of all, let us recall here that the IMF, the World Bank, the U.S. State Department report from Blinken had all expressed concern over corruption and bad fiscal discipline and the environment that is not conducive for doing business, to attract investors. Besides our infrastructure barriers, corruption and all of these vices, social vices alone, are a hindrance to investment coming to the country. So it's sad. They're aware that these reports are out there. Mr. Duple would say that, when before investor comes to your country, they research, they look at these reports, and these reports give them guidance as to whether they should come to your country or not. In addition to this report, President Boyka and his team have said that they have come to right the wrongs, to give us a different image out there. But sadly, every time President Boyka is out of the country begging for money, something, to the contrary, comes out from Monrovia, going to further impact our image out there. So it is sad. And I said this to mean that, this whole thing about this vehicle, let us not forget that it comes from the background where Medtech was brutally condemned by the opposition, the very Boyka opposition. Medtech was condemned by the Boyka opposition that it was a bad deal for Liberia, and that if they had taken power, they would scrap it, they would trash it, and get it off the books. Now they came to power, they argue over that thing, whether to keep Medtech or to kick Medtech out the door. That is a corrupt, bad deal. It was Amin Modad and the same LRA boss today, James Jara, who wrote a letter to the president arguing for Medtech, pleading for Medtech. It was Amin Modad who went to the legislature and sat in on the hearing and argued why the legislature should keep Medtech. Medtech is under evaluation for bad deals. All right, Amin Modad argues that Medtech was, even though in July Medtech was, the Supreme Court put a halt on Medtech's function, but for June, July, and then they lifted it. But at the same time, with all of this negative propaganda around Medtech, while with Amin Modad, the chief propagandist for Medtech, goes and take, a vehicle value around $100,000, a luxurious vehicle, and claiming that it is a public vehicle. Now, the idea of it being a public vehicle is not the argument like Mr. Ducle just said, but the volume of the cash involved in a poor economy like you see. How do we go to beg for money to come and help this country? How can President Boyka be saying at every meeting, even to the United Nations, that Liberia is one of the struggling nations economically, and then your government officials is writing $100,000 value car, and you who also the president outside of your national budget, in your no money situation, you and your vice president writing a $1 million worth of value car. And don't forget, Mr. Eastman, the presidential convoy does not travel in one vehicle that carries the president. It has to be a twin vehicle for security purpose. A twin vehicle meaning it has to give that kind of decode. They know that you don't know which one the president is driving in. So you spend on luxurious vehicles in volume. It is the same President Boyka who kept quiet when Grispe used pensioners' money for vehicle that cost $100,000 a piece for 5 of those vehicles, totally around $500,000, $500,000 before the inauguration, when he was not even the government official. President Boyka kept quiet. So why are they doing this to the country? But I take this further, right? And any of the other panelists can comment on this. Let me say this. When President Boyka remains quiet on these vices in our society as we see it, and the country is getting harder by the moment, we got to think about what happened in Kenya just the other day because of hardship. We need to start to think about what happened next door in Freetown just Wednesday. They're going Wednesday. When there was a massive protest in Freetown, when the people protested because of hardship in the country. And 26 of the Sierra Leoneans lost their lives and 2 police officers were killed. It's on the international media. What is President Boyka thinking? I listened to Darius DeLong just the other day on the Senate hearing of the reports from the alteration of the budget, and Senator DeLong said this. He said, we're sitting here and we're doing all these things that happen on our watch, and the president is not doing nothing, and we are about to allow Minister Myers to go on any punitive measure. He said we'll be sitting here and people will rise up against us and will drive us out of this Senate. And Prince Johnson got up and said, I agree with Darius DeLong. And happened in Burkina Faso, they were in the parliament and people came and drove them out of there and went and burned their homes. That's what Prince Johnson said. And he said, I am disappointed in the rescue government. Even though we brought it, but I'm disappointed in the rescue. So if the rescuers themselves are getting frustrated, what's more about the ordinary Liberians? Are we setting ourselves up for a massive public uprising? That's the question I leave you with, Mr. Eastman.
Wow, that's something hard to chew on. Gibson, you can answer that. You think things are getting to that point where the population will be so disenchanted that they will have no choice but to rise up?
That's a very tough question to answer, because for me, I think when you look at it right now, I think there's people are tired, but I don't think people are that tired to get in the streets to try to promote a protest, right? I think when protests have been successful in the past, has been when someone who was not favored for something got their groups. You had the council of this, council of that. All those folks who are disenfranchised because of either being ostracized by their own government or just, quite frankly, wanting to gain notoriety. They got people on the streets by manipulating their minds. So I think Liberians right now, I would say a lot of people are tired. They're just probably looking towards the ballot box, or they're waiting until a couple more years to probably try to take to the streets, from my opinion, to probably try to go ahead and do any type of protesting. Because at the end of the day, Liberians, we are our greatest problem, I think, when it comes to how we found ourselves in this mess time and time again. People will continue to come, of course, as politicians and say what you want to hear. But Liberians are not taking the responsibility to go ahead and challenge what somebody is saying and do further research and try something new. We're so used to doing things over and over, sort of like a pattern, to where we will whine about it for a couple months and then we'll move on, or we'll try to find a way to cope with it. And so we'll wait until the next the next election to go ahead and make any type of change. So I don't see any uprising taking place anytime soon, in my opinion, because Liberians, as I said, we are a people who are probably okay with the status quo. And the status quo is what will remain until we stop waiting for someone to empower us, to embolden us to go out into the streets. It's time that we take it into our own hands. And I think it's a different formula. When you look at Kenya, you look at Sierra Leone, these individuals are not just strictly hungry to be fed by somebody who's going to pay them $20, $5 to go in the street. They're doing it off their own mindsets of saying we want change. And I don't think Liberians are there.
Okay, Mr. Dugley, you know, when we used to see countries revolting and having coup d'etat, we say, well, that thing there is not for us. But now, here we are, we're seeing it again. But we're saying, are we gonna follow this track again after all we've been through? What do you think is a better solution?
I think I'll beg to differ with Brother Gibson on this one. And you know, when a protest erupted in Freetown, one of the fears analysts had, observers of the region, one of their major fear was they did not want to see what is happening in Freetown to occur in other neighboring countries, particularly Liberia, since the circumstances in Sierra Leone is much like the one in Liberia. And so when you look at the situation that erupted in Sierra Leone, the main reason behind it was the inability of the people to cope with the difficulties, with the challenges, and yeah, some of the, you see, Jimmy, in politics, perception is reality in politics. So whether we accept it or not, that's just how that works in a political world. So the population of Liberia is very young, just like the population of Sierra Leone. About, I think, you're looking at anywhere from 30 to 35, 40% young people, or even more. You see, yes, you might think that maybe you don't see it happening until next election. But I can tell you, from speaking to people on the ground on a daily basis, and the difficulties that we all know exist, look, things are only getting harder in Liberia. And you have all these young people full of energy with nothing to do, absolutely nothing to do. There has to be something, there has to be a thinking towards how do we channel the energy of these disenchanted young people, unemployed young people who have absolutely nothing to lose, because they've already lost more than we can imagine. So I don't, if no remedy is proposed whereby these young people can be either put somewhere into some training or something that will engage them, trust me, from now to the next election will be too far for them to react. Again, I'll go back to what happened in Syria, in Freetown. The major complaint was they are now unable to feed their families. Things that used to cost $10 now costing $20. And the government, at least the perception from that point of view was that the government was not doing enough to address their concerns. And it was the same thing that happened in Kenya when that financial legislation was introduced. And the people felt like this was not anything that were meant to make difference in their lives. And they rioted, they went in the street, and the president retracted his proposal. So if we do not address these things, and the people keep seeing the gap of marginalization keep widening, trust me, something will spark something, and we're gonna be in a place where we don't want to be. So people can only take so much before they explode. So these things are going to have a cumulative effect on us as a nation, and particularly on the young people. So as Brother Pierce was saying here earlier, the things that we need to do that will help us is to create jobs. And the way we create jobs is if we have investors, if we have people coming to invest into the country where they will create jobs, and these young people will have jobs to do. But if you have a country that is not doing all the things that's supposed to attract new investment, we are in for a very rude awakening, believe me or not.
Thank you, Mr. Gaiman.
Mm-hmm.
There was a song me and you might remember. Every day things are getting worse. You remember that song?
That's correct.
And when it gets to a certain point, people begin to lose it. Where do you think we're going? It's very early in this young administration, but where do you think we're headed here?
Well, today I was shocked. The information minister, we are all from Buchanan. He is a propagandist. His entire family, they're all into public relations, and they have been pounding the opposition. And today he wrote, his name is, I think it's Joseph Pia.
John Malik Pia.
Yeah, his younger brother wrote,
okay,
and in Bassa and said, I have defended the rescue train for 9 months, but it looks like the opposition may not come for us. It is us that will come for us. This is somebody from within the rescue mission. It's one of the propagandists. So he is now feeling the pulse of the folks. And he's warning the unity partisans or the top brass that you are looking at the wrong people. You are looking at CDC. You are looking at the wrong people. The people that brought you to power are the one that will come for you, as evidence today what you heard from the media, that the unity partisans were going for Mr. Moda himself. They were not seditions. They were rescue missionaries, they call themselves, that were going for him. They said they were going to get him. They were not opposition, they were not sedition. So what we are saying here, yes, the opposition they may have no appetite for protest. They are saying to themselves, listen, they say they came to rescue, don't go in the street on their behalf, don't do anything, let Liberia go through and feel it. And they themselves are saying now that, listen, we did not bring you to power to make us look bad. Our children are not in school. Schools have not opened. The education minister asking schools to delay opening. In the history of Liberia, I have never heard this, where the Ministry of Education is appealing to the private schools and government schools to not open yet because times are hard. I never heard this before. So anyone who takes the Liberian people for granted, I want to agree with Honorable Dukley here that we are basically on the time bomb. It may just take something small to spark, and who knows what will happen. Yesterday we had a guest from the Liberian People's Party who said, Jerome, I retired from the United States. I was an auditor for the state of New York, retired making good money. I'm in Liberia. He said, but I'm afraid they will come after us and I may not have time to leave. You were here yesterday. That's what Nyakwese said.
Yeah.
He said, when they come for us, it doesn't matter what gate you have around what fence you have around your house, what gate. Why can't that few cement blocks do to 1 million people coming after you? So this is why he says the Gonglo camp have decided to divorce, because we made it clear we're contingent on the fact that we will support you. And you say you will do X, Y, Z. We gave you a 10-point platform to include into yours. And you agreed. And not one of those. And one was 10% exile tax on all raw material leaving the country. If that happens, you don't have to go and borrow money. That's enough money. You can get $200-300 million right there that you can use to develop the country. But even if you got that money, do you have the will to use it for the purpose intended? All you're going to do exactly, the more money we get, the more corruption, the more money we get. I said, look at the Liberian government is operating on a percentage basis. We get 90% and you get 10%. So if we get 10 billion, we'll still get 10% of 9 billion, and then you get nothing. For the Minister of Labor to say, I wrote it down. He said the economy grew 4.7%. But the unemployment rate is 95.7%. How stupid can you be as a minister? They say he's a lawyer, he's this and that. You say the economy grew 4.7%. It's on the United States economy grew, I think, about 3%. Liberia, they say 4.7%. But unemployment, he said 95.7%. The whole country is unemployed except the few people that have a government job. And they are making 95% of the money. So I agree with Mr. Dukley. The number just don't add up. How can a labor minister, Mr. Crowe, who is a lawyer and well-known according to the folks, says the economy grew 4.7%, but unemployment is 95.7%. 95%. Somebody makes sense out of this. If 95% of the people are not working, they can't feed their families. One said, you driving on Tottenham Boulevard, you get 10, 15 children chasing your car, selling chocolate.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Just to make ends meet, selling chocolate. Do you know how many chocolate you have to sell just to make $1?
Yeah.
We're not putting them to effective use.
If we don't do anything, it is quite possible that it may not be political, it may not be for opposition, it may just be spontaneous. So this is not beating on the government. This is, if you have ears, listen. If you get eyes, you can see. The president go through these things every day when he goes to work.
Yeah.
And if I might just add, and Brother Jerome, you know that between 60 to 65% of those people, their entire survival on a daily basis, entirely 100% rest on remittances that come from overseas to them, from relatives and friends.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's another thing. Growth and development are not the same. Just because you're selling more iron ore doesn't mean you're giving more jobs. So, and those projections that come from the UN, whatnot, they are estimates. They're not real. So we have to be careful with other people's data. We are not doing our homework. In other words, investigating our problem and finding solutions. Mr. Pearson, or should I say Dr. Pearson, you, but being a doctor, you know about research. Why are we not engaged in researching the result, the resolutions of our problems?
That's a good question. Having even myself being an educator in Liberia and educated in Liberia for most part of my life, our education is not research oriented. Matter of fact, majority of the time we're in classroom, I was a different guy because my father, before he passed away, would buy me all my textbooks before the school year even begins. So I was indoctrinated to having all my textbooks and read ahead of my instructors. So I guess that's one of the reasons why I became successful. And we kept around novels and read a lot of novels. So we're open to reading and exposure. But listen to this one, right? Our country is not research oriented. Majority, like somebody just said, majority of what we act on are imported from outside. Other people tell us about ourselves. Exactly. Meanwhile, we got our agricultural college, we got our research institute, we got the legions and everybody. Everybody's sitting down waiting for USAID didn't get money to conduct research. UNDP didn't get money to conduct research. But some research does not require you to have $1 million. You got universities, we got a lot of universities in Liberia that you can use university students, empower them by carrying on mini research across the country on little social issues and give you some of the data that you need. I'm not talking about a fabulous research like the national census or the demographic report, all that kind of thing. But common surveys on maybe a drug within drug crisis within West Point or Nukutan, or maybe issues concerning maybe sexual violence in Caribsburg. I mean, there's the little things in partnering with the different institutions, university in Liberia. We're not doing those things with our kids, you know. And then sadly, I close by saying sadly, you know, and then someone comes to like Mr. Gateman and tell you, say, oh, we experience growth, but you didn't say you're cutting down on your budget. You carry austerity and you say that was growth. How do you balance the two? If there's economic growth, then you cannot be doing austerity. You know, Sir Joseph said it yesterday. He said, Joseph was so frustrated. He said, how can we be doing recast? And the recast we're doing is calling for some excess shifting of money for around maybe $5 million when we're giving MedTech $5 million back. So while we give MedTech $5 million back, we'll just use the $5 million that we see from them to begin with and fund our budget and just move on recasting, because the time is already late. We should be talking about the 2025 budget as we speak. Why are we still talking about 2014 budget?
Yeah.
You know, why aren't we having conversation around 2025 budget in October? We're now going to October, then we get November. Before you look, it's December. Why are we waiting for December before we start talking about 2025 budget when we should be talking about we're talking about 2024, we should be talking about 2025. So again, it goes to say that I don't want to say we're academically lazy, because I have been in Liberia before. Even when at the University of Liberia, I did in my department, we did do some international research facilitation. Like the students come from abroad and come to Liberia to do research, their PhD or their master's program, and we go on in the villages for them. What they get from us at the time when they only give us what they pay my way, like give me $10 US. It was sufficient for me to take myself and people and go in the village and come back. And not only that, but I will enter the data and all into the computer, and then they get the soft data, and all they gotta do is just put it through the softwares, project proposal softwares that will analyze the data for them. The data analytics software and analyze the data for them. What's stopping Liberia? How many research is Legis putting up every month, every week? How many research universities putting up every month or every semester? How many? Nothing. If anything, I know we have our research institute in Liberia that evaluate those research that you want to run in the country. If you run it by them, they give you support. But it is not happening. Go on the website, Liberia Research Institute. Go there, Mr. Eastman. Go after the program. Just do Liberia Research Institute and see how many research that institute has supervised. In less than 10. Less than 10. So what are we talking? You know, it's sad. And I would say, I know sometimes we got our professors listening to these programs sometimes. I would say, listen, can we make our universities research based? Even if it's not going to be 100%, but can we get it to some status where we are involved in a lot of research, and then those research inform government programs? Okay,
that's how it's supposed to be.
Yeah, until then it's sad. We Maybe no, let me clarify the air. Somebody will say, well, what's about you? What are you doing? I do mini research, but it's not sufficient to inform national development. My research that I do in Liberia is at the community level for my NGO that I got there. I started an NGO in Liberia since 2021 that employ Liberians. It's 100% Liberian-based NGO. And I just did it to get employment opportunity for young people in Liberia. And we're one of the most viable Liberian NGO in the country. If you look it up, look at Shalom Liberia on the internet, you'll see some great things. We have congressmen from the United States coming to visit us. We're one of the most vibrant implementers for USAID, UNICEF and things. I'm not anything in our organization. I just support them. So we'll do some small research to inform the programs that they run, and they're doing extremely well. You know, I don't know why our government is not, and the people taking pay for these things. Legislators taking pay for these things. Good money too. Good money too.
Okay, let's go on the last topic. This is an interesting topic. Okay, I read an announcement from the U.S. Embassy in Monrovia that from September 22 to 24, an interagency delegation of representatives from the United States Department of State, of Global Criminal Justice, of Homeland Security Investigations, Department of Justice, the U.S. Attorney's Office in Philadelphia, and FBI, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, will visit Liberia to strengthen U.S. Liberian cooperation across the justice sector and contribute to Liberian efforts to establish a war crimes court. The delegation will meet all the representatives of government and as well as the Liberian counterparts. So it appears that the U.S. is going on about this war crimes court. And since the announcement they made earlier, we haven't heard much in the news in Liberia about this war crimes court. But to quote the U.S. Embassy, it says, "We commend Liberia's commitment to build a war crimes court, and we are proud to send this delegation to Liberia to support local efforts towards justice and accountability." So we got the U.S. looking into doing beefing up our war and economic crimes effort. What do you see? I'm going to go to you, Mr. Dukley. How do you see this panning out eventually?
I actually wanted to comment on something Dr. Pearson was saying earlier relative to our educational system not being research-based. Look, everything starts from the beginning. And I mean, I grew up in Monrovia until when I was 13. I left and I haven't been there since. And I mean to live there. So our educational system is, to say the least, is mediocre at every level. Primary, elementary, high school, at the university. I think the University of Liberia is probably the worst in terms of not being research oriented in what they do at the tertiary level there, you know, and I mean that's education is one of the areas that I have a lot of interest in. I haven't been a beneficiary of bilateral scholarships myself, so and the lack of importance being given to that sector in Liberia is really disheartening, to say the least. But I will leave it at that. You see, I think I remember on this very platform, people were saying that this notion of war crime is a shenanigan, is going to go nowhere. And now we see the United States is trying to pave the way for the Liberians to get started. And I think it's a good idea. And I like the fact that they brought in these various agencies from the Justice Department, the State Department, to help Liberia and stuff. And we know from the get-go that it was not going to be an entire Liberian initiative. We're going to need some expertise from the international community as well as the United States. So I think it's a good beginning. And again, my fear is that I don't want the Liberian government to see this as another opportunity for them to, siphon the funds that are going to be allocated for this endeavor into their own pockets, as they've done with every other initiative that have been initiated in Liberia. But, from what I read, it looks promising, and I think it's a good idea.
Mm-hmm. Mr. Gibson.
Yeah, as Mr. Dukley was saying, I think whenever the U.S. does any efforts with engaging with countries and they are boots on the ground, I think it moves a lot of weight. It sends a clear message that they're not going to stop until the mission is achieved or the goal is achieved. So I think this is promising. I know that the individual that was appointed as the executive director for this whole effort on the Liberian side was removed, and I don't know who's been placed as interim or the temporary individual yet, but I know that that's probably something that will be discussed as well to get the ball rolling. But yeah, the U.S. is definitely not going to leave any stone unturned. They're probably going to ensure that their key players that they want are in the driver's seat to ensure that this is done without any stalling by the administration.
Excellent. Mr. Gaiman, the war crimes court, you think it's going anywhere? We have the U.S. people, the U.S. delegation in town now.
The U.S. have always wanted the war crime court, and they still do. But the U.S. was in a political and international conundrum. If the war crime court, as Liberian people suspect it should be, if that's what's going to happen, the U.S. is in some serious trouble in Liberia. If they are going to do it surgically to take who all they want and now who all should be, then it is possible. Those 5 nuns that were murdered in Caldwell, those sisters are not going to die in vain. If you think they are coming there because of Liberian, you are wasting your time. The United States citizens were murdered. Some I heard were decapitated. Those Catholic nuns. And the United States is not going to allow that to go. Their only obstacle was, and I heard this from few folks, what happens if you have economic and war crime court? And some members of the international community and those that were crowned Nobel Peace Prize laureates happens to have been one of those who should be held accountable for some of the greatest atrocities in the country. How do you jive a person who the United States nominated as a Nobel Peace Prize winner? How do you jive if she was ensnared into this war crime as one of the perpetrators or somebody who is gravely responsible for it? How do you jive that? What does that do to the image of the Nobel Peace Prize? What does that do, for instance, if Ellen Johnson Sirleaf was involved or needed? How do you jive that with the first female president on the continent? So the United States has always wanted to bring people to justice, specifically for those nuns that were killed in Caldwell. So, like the folks say in the United States here, this is a process of 2-3 porcupines coming together because it is cold and they need each other for warmth. So they have to gingerly come together so they don't perish together. So we'll see how the United States is going to dance the do-si-do. How do you surgically remove those that you want and give some passes? For instance, if you want a Prince Johnson and you want a butt naked, then what do you do about those who sponsor Prince Johnson and sponsor butt naked? Butt naked and Prince Johnson did not have access, they did not have the means to guns, ammunition, Budweiser, and all of these. What happened to those who supplied the ammunition, the guns, and the Budweiser? So who holds the greater responsibility, the guy who shot a gun or the guy who brought a gun and the Budweiser? So this is where the United States stands, and they are gingerly dancing this, and it's not going away. So we'll see how it goes. The United States did the same thing with Noriega. Look what it did in Panama. They went in there, surgically removed one person, and the country got even worse. So we'll see. The United States foreign policy is one that cannot be predicted. But they are in a conundrum. If you are bringing people If you go by the TRC report convicted. And they named names. In fact, they said Ellen Johnson said he should not be involved in politics for minimum 30 years. They called names and they named all of these folks. And she was on the top of the list. So now we're going to see how you're going to establish the economic war crime court and how you're going to take some of these people out subjectly and leave other folks. It's something for us to see. But if you left that with me, I would say we got a little ways to go.
Okay, and lastly, let me come to you, Mr. Dr. Pearson. They, according to the information, that they bring extensive experience. Now, 3 days is a very short time, so I'm not sure this is a preliminary delegation, maybe to establish who contacts are and the general way they will be interacting. But a lot of people don't believe that this war crimes court will go anywhere because there's so much impunity in amongst our ranks. But do you think the insistence of the U.S. government in this direction will yield any benefit?
Yeah, I would say yes, and I would say yes for three reasons. One, people need to have closure, and that is very significant to the peace and stability of the country going forward. I don't care how long we try to avoid this, that's going to be an issue for us. Because what happens is that if you don't address the past, you give other people the boldness to continue to do what they do. And then we give people the feeling that they can go ahead and do what they've already done. But the second thing I want to say, even the U.S. needs closure. Like Mr. Gaiman mentioned the nuns that were killed. Let us not forget that the FBI did go to Liberia and investigated thoroughly the entire killing of the nuns. And that whole thing was properly and exhaustively investigated. But the reports were sealed. And the reason the reports were sealed is because if it went down to the FBI for that report, they will tell you that they cannot make it public because they were waiting for this very opportunity. The U.S. government has a law, a statute of limitation. So the last time I checked, the argument why they couldn't make that report public is because of a goal for prosecution of anyone for that situation was because they said that the nuns were killed and they cannot prosecute that case here in the U.S. because of the statute of limitations. So they are hoping that with Liberia reopening out of its past will give the United States an opportunity to revisit that situation by prosecution on the Liberian soil, where the special court will not have any statute of limitation on that in that instance. So that's a possibility for them to have closure as well. So let me say this: the war and economic crimes court will go on. There's nothing that's going to stop it. And the thing about it is that the war in Liberia and the crimes committed is well documented, Mr. Eastman. Well documented. When I did my research for my master's program at University of Liberia, my research was on the TRC process of both a comparative analysis of Liberia and the Sierra Leone TRC process. Self-sponsored, I was able to go to Sierra Leone, Freetown, Sierra Leone, and liaise with the Fulbright College there, the Peace Department there, and the student council that facilitated my research across Freetown with all of the stakeholders that participated in the TRC process in Freetown. I was able to hold a person-to-person interview with Bishop Ampa, the then head of TRC in Sierra Leone. And my dissertation, my thesis is in the University of Liberia. People usually reach out to me when they're having conversation on these issues. And what Bishop Ampa told me, like Mr. Gaiman, we couldn't effect the execution of that TRC report for Liberia because Madam Ellen Johnson was in power. Like you said, the international community had invested heavily in her. Harvard University had promoted her. The sentiments around feminism was so high at the time. She was the first female president in the world, in Africa at the time, in Africa, I should say in particular. And not just that, but I mean, she was the darling girl of the West at the time. And Liberia being so fragile, they didn't want to disturb the peace at the time, even though Sierra Leone gave us an example, but Liberia case was different because she was in power. All right, and she was seen as the stabilizer, coming out of war. So now that she's not in power, I think that's a different dynamics to the whole politics in the game. And I strongly believe, Mr. Eastman, if you listen to the level of representation in this U.S. visit, it tells you that they cover all bases, and they are going to ensure. I don't want to put myself out, but there are some of us behind the scene who interacting with these people. We are currently advocating why I said that even President Boyka re-establishing a vetting process for the person to head the executive committee. Why is the whole committee that is vetting those for that position? Why are they quiet? Why are they not engaging civil society? Openly. They just get a few civil society members on the committee, but everything is just being done quietly. These things have to be open so that the public can critique it, and then you can make the necessary correction before the person is handpicked, or appointed by the president. Why are they so quiet again? And so they're coming to the country to address some major bottlenecks that stand as a risk to even hinder the process going forward. So we're hoping that by the time they leave Liberia on the 24th, a lot of our concerns in the background will be covered. Okay, will be covered. And Liberia is going to have the War Crimes Code, trust me. And right now they are seeing to ensuring that the security of the country is beat up with the ECOWAS rapid response forces that are on the standby within the West African region to respond to any threat to our security. All of those things are going to be covered, giving some reassurance to the government. So yes, we're gonna see this thing go through, and I think it's going to happen. We should be hopeful it's going to happen, Mr. Eastman.
Wow. So you think it's really going to happen? Okay, gentlemen, I think the night is coming to a short end. I'm going to let all of you do your closing. You have a minute each, and we'll start with Mr. Gaiman.
Yes, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. I have a message here on the screen. One of the young men that was a guest of our CEO, Dennis Jar, very eloquent. He was an advocate. For some reason, he fell ill, very, very ill. If you see this man picture, you will feel sorry, gentlemen. We need to help. I think the family is only asking for, they say, $3,000 US to have some major operation. So whatever we all can do in radio land, television land, in FOL land, please, the number is scrolling down. You can make your donation to this cause. Let's save a life. This young man is very bright. Like we're saying, when our country is in peril, they are cutting money from health. And these are brilliant young men. Simple illnesses that could be killed. Not even in a hospital, but in local clinics. Somebody is about to lose his life because we don't have the necessary medication to cure simple stuff. So we are asking you, we are appealing to you to please make a contribution. Everybody that on here, if you can, please do. And then our friends in radio land and television land, let's help save Brother Hassan Jallo's life.
Do you have a number that the people can give a Cash App or?
Yes.
Zelle.
It's scrolling right here. If you look at what you posted, that we have the FOL. You can donate. We have the Cash App. We have Zelle. And if you need more information, you can call. The number here is 605-313-6004. You can call. You can donate to FOL Liberia via Cash App at $FOLMEDIA. It's right there. That's the Cash App. You can send money, and please put it in the note section for Brother Jallo. Let's do that. Let's raise some money for Brother Jallo. Let's save his life. This young man is bright, brilliant young man. Just took sick.
Can you say that number you can give him? 605?
There goes the Cash App. Cash App to $FOL Media. That's the Cash App.
No, you were giving out a number that started with 605.
Oh, yeah, that's the telephone number here.
605.
605 was if you're calling in to contribute to the conversation, but the catch up
Yeah,
number
but it is still the regular number when you call with that's why they got us. But anyway, yeah, that is that. But if you want more information, you can call 772 940 2871.
Is that your number?
I will put it on the screen.
Thank you, Joe. Is the Delaware man in Liberia?
Yes.
Okay.
He's in Liberia. Mr. Denijai is the direct contact. He will be able to get whatever we raise to him. You can call Denijai directly too. He will give you the information. He's in contact with the family. So guys, let's do something to help this young man. It is just terrible what's happening in our country, but that's what it is. Thank you very much, Mr. Eastman, for giving me the opportunity to serve. It's a great time. We are not talking about politics here all the time. We also do other works, like saving lives. We are working on having Christmas party for the children in Atlanta with the Liberian communities there. So we do a lot of good things. It's not only about politics. We talk about family too. We talk about saving lives. I mean, a young man who is this brilliant was on this show. We had a great time with him. To call the next time to hear to see him. If you see this man picture now, Mr. Denijai has it. I don't know if the family would be comfortable sharing it, but you'd be surprised a healthy person that looks just like me to look like toothpick.
Wow.
It's unbelievable. Thank you very much.
There's Linda Hand. Mr. Gibson.
Yeah, thank you for inviting me to the conversation tonight. Liberia has a lot of work to do when it comes to the transparency piece. I hope that this administration, particularly, will focus on being a bit more transparent and doing things right by the Liberian people. There's not any more time that's left to waste when it comes to addressing the concerns. And it's time that they step up to the plate, and the folks who have been entrusted to lead, specifically President Boyka, he needs to speak up and be a bit more firm when it comes to leading, as opposed to taking a back seat and watching everything be in disarray. It's not good for the nation. It's not good for our image that he's been going out and speaking about. I think investors will be quite afraid to come into a nation where you have ministers who are riding around in cars that would feed many, many families, but unfortunately we're prioritizing things that are not really centered around the people and building the nation. Thank you all for the time. I look forward to being a part of the next conversation. Have a good evening.
Very good. Mr. Dugley.
Yeah, Mr. Eastman, thank you very much for the opportunity today. I want to thank all my fellow panelists. It was a very good debate, and I know we are all here. Whatever we argue for, whatever we argue against, we usually argue in good faith. And I think we all want to see our country do well. And I hope and pray that somebody somewhere is listening and they will take heed to some of the constructive criticism that we are putting forward here. I want to thank you again, Jimmy, for giving me an opportunity. It was a pleasure being here.
It was a pleasure having you. And lastly, Dr. Pearson.
Yeah, Mr. Jimmy, Mr. Eastman, I should say, thank you for having me tonight, and thanks to my esteemed panelists for the nice show tonight. You know, I just want to close by saying to those who are running our country, look, let us be honest with ourselves. The rule of law is one of the fundamental pillars upon which investors feel comfortable coming to invest in your country when they understand you can respect the rule of law, that you play by the books, you play by the rules. If they find out that people can come, corrupt companies can come in the country and pay off a government official to be their spokesperson and they can circumvent the law, or when they feel that the government can operate outside of its own legal budget, which is the law of the country's spending law, I mean, it puts fear in them. So if you can leave your country budget, which is a law, and operate outside of it, what confidence do they have that if they invest their initial investment capital in your country, that you are not going to squander it as well? So I think we should wake up. We should be more serious. And I want to just say to administration, let's look next door what happened in Sierra Leone. I mean, that is an indicator that something is wrong, and the people cannot continue to endure hardship. It's just a matter of time before they will start to stand up and push back. And last but not the least, let us not forget that much of our West African brothers and sisters have experienced military takeover, and people are beginning to have taste for military regime across West Africa. We don't want to be another case study. Let us do what is right and remain focused and lead and govern well. Thank you, Mr. Eastman.
Right. And folks, so we come to another conclusion of Between the Headlines. We will always try to bring you sensitive topics that if we can advise, our leaders the direction they should go, if we can expose information that they're not privy to, if we can add to the peace and security of our country and the sanity and the education of our youth, we will always do that. That's what we are here for. And we believe in one central principle, that we, without discrimination to any, we are all Liberians, and we have to work toward one purpose: to promote Liberia. With that, we come to an end.
We are Liberian. Liberia is our home. Liberian people. Liberia.